I'm gonna run down with the bell. I'm running, I'm going down. I'm going down. Bell, bell. Bell down the back, bell down the back. Bell, bell, bell. Bell, bell, bell.
Okay, well done, thank you. I'm now going to hand over this panel.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much. It's just, I'd like one person who's super duper brave just to promote the person they just spoke about. It doesn't have to be a kid's story. You can just say who they are, maybe something that they told you. If you want to tell the kid's story, that's viable too. But someone who just want to say, hey, this person I just met is awesome. Does anyone want to do that? Yes, amazing. Hand right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, got microphone. Thank you for being so brave, by the way.
No problem. My name's Melissa Bachman-Wood, and I'm the Vice President of Studio at Jagex. And today I've met Astrid, who's a kick-ass level designer, who, growing up, learned to be far superior to her brother on all of his Commodore 64 games.
Well done. Congrats. Okay, so we should probably move on with our panel now. So now that we're all a bit more acquainted, I hope we're all feeling more acquainted, we'll go on to our next panel. So this one is called The Age of the Heroine, Gender and Culture Representation in Games. Basically, for the next 50 minutes or so, our panelists will be taking a discerning look at games and the stories they tell about women. And they'll be tackling questions like, how are diverse creators shifting the status quo? Is the games industry moving beyond one-dimensional gender narratives? And the really big one, is this the age of the heroine? So here to bring their amazing expertise to the conversation, I'm going to read a huge long list of amazing panelists. So we have Claire Boissiere, the games producer, writer, and vice chair at BGI Trustees. We have Claire. How are you, Claire? Hi, Claire. We have Jasmine Idun Isdrake, the CEO and executive director at Playcentric Studios. We have Kate Parkinson, the co-founder of Also Known As. Lucy Kyriakidou, freelance 2D artist. I'm sorry, I butchered your second name there. Rosa Carbo-Mascarell, lead game designer at Nexus Stories. And our amazing moderator, Sharon Tolaini Sage, who is a lecturer in games and art design at the Norwich University of the Arts. Please give them a huge round of applause.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Yes, nodding, smiling, that's excellent. Okay, hi, a very warm welcome to our first panel at the conference. This is a great opportunity to, sorry, can everybody hear me better now? A great opportunity to meet some really amazing people. So I just will give you a little bit of background first, briefly. Our theme fits very closely with the theme of the conference and also picks up on some really interesting points that were made just now about my child Lebensborn and how opportunity is perhaps sometimes overlooked by women in the industry. So our title for the panel is The Age of the Heroine. And we hope that audience members will join in at certain points, so please do, there is a mic somewhere, so please do ask questions if you'd like to during the panel discussion, and please feel involved. So our titles panel is The Age of the Heroine, and really it couldn't be more appropriate for our panelists. They have much that is daring and different in both their professional backgrounds and their wealth of experience, and I'm going to ask them to give a brief introduction of themselves. Each of our panelists has brought an extraordinarily valuable worldview into their games industry career. So please go ahead and introduce yourself.
So I'm Kate. I run an immersive tech research and human-centered design studio based here in London. Is this working? Okay. I'd like to share. here in London. My co-founder is also a woman, so happy about that. Before this, we've been up and running for about 2 years. Both of us are former journalists, a lot of time covering conflict. So yeah, kind of worlds apart from here, but what I think is really interesting is that I was running around war zones in this sort of very testosterone-fueled, quite masculine world, but women are really thriving in that world, so it's really fascinating then to work in this sort of gaming world where there is still quite a bit of work to be done, and yeah, really happy to be here.
Hi everyone. Is this okay? Is this working? Cool. My name is Lucy, and I don't have that great an introduction. I am a 2D games artist. I've been freelance for 9 years now. I got straight into freelancing after uni. I worked in so many games. I'm currently designing characters on Battletoads, which is yeah, it's really fun. Yeah, I do a lot of other things. I'm a Women in Games ambassador. I'm a Women Making Games Northeast admin. I'm a STEM ambassador. So basically, I'm either at home in my pajamas, like drawing, or I'm out there just talking to people like this, and I still get super nervous. But it's cool. This is okay. It's just between us.
I'm Jasmine. I've been building game innovation labs, doing things mostly that haven't been done before, like cyber-computer interfaces, for example. So doing this kind of experimental art house gamey things, but because that never paid my rent, I kind of tried to build like call it collaboratory innovation lab where other people could also share tools, share knowledge to actually be able to do stuff without having any money or traditional business models. So I did that for a while. Then I was in AAA and kind of tried to do a similar lab, but in AAA that kind of limited the creativity. What I thought was at the edge wasn't even close, even with VR and stuff, because artists did VR things in the 60s. So it's what's new in AAA is like old school in the art scene. So yeah, so I tried to build my own stuff to solve all the problems that yeah, kind of started there. But I got to learn about games in archaeology mainly. So I started, I got this good, how do you say it, ACE card. So when I talk with politicians or students, which I often do, I can always say that games are our oldest form of interactive arts, and I can back it up with scientific facts, and that is really a nice thing to have. So the academic background was very important to bring into games and to changing the story in media about games.
Have one. Hi. Is this one working? Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Claire Boissiere, and I've been making games for about 20 years. I've worked at studios such as Media Molecule and London PlayStation. So some of the kind of high-profile games, I've got my name in there somewhere. I'm a producer, kind of writer type person, so yeah, I'm the person running around, kind of just making sure out on time. I'm also the vice chair of the BGI, which is the charitable organisation behind the National Video Game Museum in Sheffield, and they're doing lots and lots of great work that makes me feel really, really proud to be involved in that. I was also recently elected onto the BAFTA Games Committee, which took me by surprise, but is also something that I'm very proud about. But in this context, possibly the most important thing about me is that I am just like you. I just get up and go to work each day and make games, and I've just been doing it for 20 years. Although I've wanted to stop many, many times in the hard industry, I've kept going. And my main aim is to hope that's an inspiration to lots of you out there. Just kind of keep doing it, reach out, network, talk to people, and it is possible to stay making games.
Thank you so much. So you can see we have somebody who hasn't told you but who began life in the construction industry on the end. We have an archaeologist, we have an artist, an entrepreneur, and we have a journalist who has been working in war zones. So my point is that sometimes women come to games as outsiders, perhaps because of their previous career, education and interests, but are sometimes outsiders simply as women, whose perspective on playful experiences is entirely different from that promoted in what has largely been a male playground. The outsider perspective, though, is very valuable and perhaps can be harnessed to provide interesting new opportunities for women who are determined not to be absorbed into a dominant orthodoxy. And I think the previous, the presentation of, which we listened to previously is also an illustration of that. So the first question I'd really like to ask our panelists is about their view and the value of their cross-disciplinary skills, because they come to games, as many people have in the audience too, with many skills that perhaps they exercise daily but don't actually realize have huge value. We all do this, and as women it's the cliche of cliches that we always say, oh, I don't really know how to do that, but actually of course we do. So I was just going to ask Kate first of all, what do you feel about this background that you have in an entirely other discipline, and how do you see it as valuable to your life in making VR experiences, which have a very serious purpose, actually? You could tell us a little bit about that.
So firstly, I want to say I did the typical woman thing this morning and arrived and sat down and said, well, I don't work in games, and, you know, I don't do this, and I feel like an imposter. And so just putting that out into the room, if any of you are ever doing that and underselling your skills, just stop it, because it's, or just know that we all do it all the time. So, but yeah, be more proud of what you do. And so to that note, I am very proud of what I do. Having worked for 15 years as a journalist and the last decade really covering conflict, I stopped, mainly because it's something you should only do for a short amount of time before it becomes quite a dark place, I have to say. But I haven't left that world behind completely. I'm now using my experiences to create immersive tech VR experiences to help better prepare journalists who are working in hostile environments. So I sort of came to this, like, put on my first VR headset and was just wowed by the opportunities and the potential for using this. But actually the journey has been a challenging one. Even the word game, I found it really uncomfortable, and actually listening to you guys talking before, as a journalist, I was like, well, this isn't a game, and it's not fun, and it's serious, and you know, it's been really difficult to sort of get over that, but really think it's invaluable to have so many different people and so many different mindsets at the table when you're designing anything. So now, welcome game people into my life, and love the game engine, and, you know, gamification of an experience. But yeah, I think working with people from all sectors, and yeah, it's invaluable to the creative process, whatever you're doing.
Fantastic. So, and Lucy, so we also had the same experience this morning, because Lucy doesn't know very much about anything and doesn't know.
Well, I was saying, all I do is I draw and I play games. That's like both my work life and my personal life.
But actually, you do other things.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about entrepreneurship, and how if you are a freelancer, if you're an artist, quite often the values and culture of entrepreneurship happen sort of without your realizing. And that's something that you do on a daily basis but don't think about.
Yeah, because you mentioned that, and this morning it got me thinking. I was like, I can write a kick-ass email not apologizing for things. Like, if you ever want to not apologize for things, like, ask me. Yeah, when I was first starting out, I worked with different industries, like more corporate stuff, and I learned a lot about how to conduct business properly, which I'm pretty sure games have a lot to learn from. Just how to deal with freelancers, and like how to deal with money in general. Because like this industry is like a passion industry, but we all need money. So I always hate that, like, doing it because I love it. It's like, loving it is great, but money is pretty good. So that's where I'm gonna stop. Money's great.
Yes, and on that positive note, So, Jasmine, you began as an archaeologist, and that's an amazing thing in itself. And it's so fascinating to know how you bring that kind of crossover discipline into your work and your research. And we heard earlier about how important research is to games, something that I feel particularly is very important, to bring outside culture into games, which can be rather inward-looking as a kind of industry. So, Jasmine, how do you think that archaeology informs your life as a game designer, and what do you think it means to have these other skills? Why are they important, do you think?
For me, it was some kind of understanding of humans, I guess, because it's I encountered like the same stories, no matter where on the planet I looked. It was the same stories, but the spirits in our environment or wherever just had different names, like Thor and Indra, or Japanese storm gods. It was very similar names, and it wasn't really gender bound before the modern religions kind of pushed out the old beliefs. So there was this kind of when I do games, I think it, even if it never provided any money, because archaeology is like an expensive hobby, art, it was the same thing. It did create this kind of diversity in thinking about humans. And then I also moved around a lot myself and lived in different places, and always being a bit alien because of the way I looked, or because I was also neurodiverse, or is neurodiverse, which was also very enriching because it also taught me just the methods of playing. Like what kind of interfaces am I using? I didn't use my voice much when I was young, so I used, actually one of my first cyborg implants was, I implanted a male scream, just because that was a way of, I'd never communicated in that way. So all that stuff, we need to bring that into games so that everyone can game, because everyone is different. And in AAA you don't have this diversity. And archaeology and just being with different people makes us better designers. So at the end, it's about better and more diverse design, I think, more accessible design. Because we can't build anything. We already have this technology that I have is super old, so it's not new. It's just that everything is money driven, and that kind of limits everything. So if we could change the money and put that in some other places, that's what I've been working on a bit, to kind of change, create some chaos and change the power structures.
Wonderful ways of thinking about things which are very different. And Claire, you, as I said, let the cat out of the bag about your other life. You started your working life in construction. So do you feel that informs your daily work? Do you feel that those other cross-disciplinary skills that you acquired in that other life, in that other career, inform your working in games?
Yes, very, very much. I went to school a while ago now. And at that time, I just loved technical drawing. The only thing you could do technical at school then, because we didn't have any computers, was kind of technical drawing. And that's what I gravitated towards. But I was the only girl in the class, and there was lots of debates about whether I should even do the class, because I was a girl, and it's, not for girls. But they let me do that. I did it. And then the careers talk all became about, well, then the only thing you can do is be an architect. Drawing, you should be an architect. But it still didn't quite fit what I wanted to do. I like technical things, I like structure, I like the kind of houses and the thoughts of designing buildings. It wasn't kind of collaborative enough for me, or it wasn't creative enough, I suppose. To sort of say architecture's not creative sounds a bit odd. But I went and tried. I went to college, but I dropped out. Very supportive. Don't. And I just found a small kind of company that was doing office buildings, and they just needed somebody to organise the office. So I just got in there, organised the office, went in at night, started doing drawings, and proved to become totally invaluable to the business. And was very fortunate enough to be trained in how the finance of the construction industry works. Going out on site, I built brick taught me how to project manage. It gave me a really good grounding in just a lot of organisation, project management, finance. Sorry, is that better? Okay. Budget sheets, all of those kind of things that are actually very relevant to the games industry. But at this point, I still had no idea the games industry existed. I played games, back on the kind of Atari, but there wasn't a thing you could actually go and do and make. Skip forward about kind of 10 years, I had my first daughter and I took a career break. And I was just looking for a kind of small contract to get back into working. And I came across a job advert for a map builder. And I thought, well, that sounds like you use the same kind of skills I've been using on AutoCAD, and I can make some maps. And it turned out to be for a games company, Kyriakidou Entertainment, making Train Simulator. And they wanted me to sit there and place trees all day to make the routes for the trains to go along. So I tried it. I was good at it. Turns out, 20 years ago, the games industry was kind of coming out of the bedroom and kind of going into the offices, and production processes didn't really exist. All the stuff that the construction industry had really well sorted in terms of tight deadlines, management, budget, and making sure it was all on time didn't exist in the games industry. So I just started using those skills, putting that into the company. And that's how I ended up kind of going from initially a design role into the production role, where I am today.
Wonderful stories of ways in which unexpected things connect and make opportunities arise out of connections that you don't perhaps think are obvious. Does anybody in the audience have a question, firstly, for any of our panellists before we move on to another question? Would anyone like to ask them anything so far? No? Being very quiet suddenly. Okay, so, sorry, nobody, just double checking. Yes?
Do you really? Because I have a lot of thoughts. So, first of all, we as women tend to apologize a lot. So, I never say sorry unless like I messed up really badly, and I always make sure to mention the facts rather than just being like, oh, this was delayed due to this, not I'm sorry this is late. So you just need to always like look at it like for me from like a business. Also, I'm surprised I got the question. Everyone else has such interesting things. Yeah, so for me, I had to learn that I'm a business and I need to present myself in a very professional way, and stop myself from this whole like imposter thing and like, sorry, this thing. So yeah, that was just like present the facts, don't apologize unless you messed up. I have more tricks, but that's for me.
Yes, there's another question.
So I was wondering whether you think it's easier or harder to kind of stumble into games from another industry, because as someone who's currently studying game design, I kind of get the impression that now that game design has kind of become a bigger thing and there's degrees you can do, it's kind of more expected in the industry that you have some kind of degree in that area or experience in that area before going in. So
Sorry. I'll be quick. From my perspective, running my own business and always looking for people to work with, I find it hard to find the right people, because in these sort of non-traditional gamey applications of the gaming techniques and the gaming skills, there's not a huge amount of money. So more than half of my job is finding funding and hustling for cash and then trying to find the people to spend that money on. But we find that the gaming industry plays quite well comparably, and so I would love it if people were stumbling into my world going, oh, we love what you're doing and we want to work with you, because we do have funding. But it's how it compares with the well-paid jobs, making the shoot 'em up games,
I'm going to say that I think the games industry is changing somewhat. like across all of society, there's a big push. You must have a degree in order to get into the field that you want. And I would love, as an industry, that we don't adopt that general approach across the board. I know a lot of the bigger studios, by default, won't even look at your CV if you haven't got that. And that just seems really, really unfair. I was lucky I was able to shift over. That is a lot rarer today, but I think it's still really, really important. We're not just the games industry. I do a lot of VR at the moment and have a lot of crossover with Kate here. And we need skills that aren't just coming from the games industry, and those industries need skills that are coming from the kind of courses that you might have been on. So I think there is a lot of cross-pollination that can happen, but as an industry, we have to recognise that more.
I think from my point of view, so I'm an educator and I work on a games degree course. And I think my frustration sometimes is that the industry can be rather inward facing, and that, yes, it's true, and the industry is changing, and lots of new young people going into the industry have degrees in game design. But what I would say is that our panel is an absolute inspiration to show us that curiosity and knowledge about other fields, bringing that cultural understanding of other things than games into your degree, into your education. Be curious and don't limit yourself to what you think games might be, because as we've just seen, games can be hundreds of other things too. So I think perhaps this area of feeding your curiosity, being multi-skilled, and actually recognizing the skills that you have already that you don't see because they're invisible. You're so good at them that you don't even know you have them, which is something that, as we've said, women often do, and pretend not to have expertise when they really, really do. So I'm going to go on to the second question, which is part of the theme of this panel, and that is talking about gender representation in games. And I'll start with Lucy, if that's okay. So starting with you, Lucy, because I know that this is something that you've worked on a lot, and as an artist you're working on still. How do you see the culture of games changing in relation to representation of women in games?
Right, so I may be bad at talking about myself, but character design and just games characters, I'm really passionate about. I've been really lucky myself to have worked with people that allow for a wider range of individuals being represented in games, and allow me to show them maybe things that they have not thought of. But I feel like even though representation of women is getting better, it's the quality of it that I find like two big issues with. And one is so developers, a lot of developers are afraid to not show conventionally attractive women. And I think that is a huge problem, because the woman can be like the character could be like knowledgeable, like intelligent, have like 5 degrees, like be really funny. But what we're showing is that if she's not attractive to you, then she shouldn't be interested, like, as a player either. And the second thing that kind of comes from that is that we take what society has taught us about what is good looking, or what we should look like, and we kind of putting it back out there. I generally try to present options when I'm working for different bodies, like skin, like ages, because if we look at the games, even though, again, they are getting better, and for bodies as well, and like cultural representation, we have such a long way to go, because there is a default that we need to break away from. And I think the only way to do that is to just stop evaluate how we create the games and how we project our own ideals into them. so I could keep going, but I'm sure someone can.
Jasmine, could I ask you similar kind of question? So what do you feel about representation and how that's evolving currently? What opportunities do you think there are for women in games to affect those kinds of representation?
Yeah, I think it is getting better, just to start on a positive note. But we cannot really relax at any point, and this goes with all freedom, like that's nothing we get. I wanted to connect with the previous question, that we have to take this power, because what I noticed in AAA is that I was intimidating. I was the only non-dude on the team where I worked, and it wasn't, you become this threat, especially also if you have a more what they considered masculine way of speaking. Like I was told to watch my tone several times and this kind of thing. And if you, I mean, I did study. I've been in game culture most of my life, but it wasn't considered games in that team because it wasn't AAA. So then it was really important, because I did a mistake of getting in the wrong role. Because I'm a creative director, but I would never be allowed to be a creative director in this setting, because that's reserved for the men who have been there for 15 or 10 years. So that was out of the question. There wasn't even an entry point. So several people that joined later, they were from different industries, they were often placed in a producer role, because then you become this kind of mothery or administrative person. And if you enter at that point, it can be really hard to change. So there's a good, really take power and fight for the thing you want to do, because when you have a big hierarchy, the system isn't very flexible. And then with representation, I also think it's important that we not just talk about two categories. In my dream world, there are no categories. Like I use categories in archaeology to categorize finds, but not people, right? So it's... of course, we don't have enough diversity, but in characters. But can we also not just talk about two categories? That would be my advice. And also in terms of appearance, like cyborg features or body mods and so on, they're so different. The way our bodies look and how we express ourselves this way, to also have a diversity in all those aspects.
Claire, do you want to just add anything about representation? How do you feel it's evolving?
It's getting better, but it's really slow, and it's too slow in the games industry. Stereotypes are just everywhere. It's not just gender stereotypes. It's not just gender stereotypes. It's race and it's religion and all the diversity that we've got. There are so many stereotypes, and it's just wrong. We're not that as human species. And why should the games industry just narrow us down to just these few representations of the entire human race? I'm a writer as well, and as a writer you would never dream of writing your book without giving your character real care and thought to the backstory, to who they are, what makes them actually tick, what makes them individual. And I just feel like in the games industry we need to get some of those kind of basics which we know about, have known about for a long time, bring them into games. I don't really know how we break this cycle. Feels a bit like the big studios keep perpetuating it. They just keep turning out the same franchises. I think maybe the key is that just lots of us have to just keep making different games. We have to keep trying and keep putting them out there, and just teaching the audience that there are lots of various games, lots of variety.
Yeah, I just want to say, because you said how do you break from it, I think that's why it's important to have diversity in the industry and the game developers themselves, because we design characters, or we decide what a character will look like, depending on our own experiences and our own standards and how we see the world. So that's why we need people from different sectors to just show us their own view. Extra.
Yes. And Kate, so in your project that you're working on, how do you feel about the representation that you're attempting to bring to characters? You were talking this morning about VR and how that provides opportunities to make characters that are empathetic, engaging characters. do you feel about the possibilities for the opportunities that are available?
I think it's a great responsibility on creators. And because my background's journalism and because my projects are either documentary or based on real stories, it's just unquestionable to me that the characters aren't authentic and aren't represented by the real people that I'm portraying. So I sort of look on at what is happening elsewhere, and I sort of can't believe it's still happening. So yeah, I think positive and real representation is crucial, and that's how I practice my work, and glad to hear others are doing it as well.
Do we have questions for our panel? Yes. Yes, right at the back. Yes.
Hi, excuse me. This is for Kate. As someone who's been involved in many conflict situations, I was wondering how you feel about, especially in VR, the aesthetics of violence in games, and do you reckon there's a line, or is there a tasteful way to manage it? Or I imagine, being involved in that and seeing these things firsthand has obviously shaped how you view these kind of things. So I'm really curious to know how you feel about violence in games generally.
Well, on the one hand, it makes working with prototypes really easily because there's loads of assets in the Unity store for us to use that sort of speak to our subject matter, so we can do mock-ups really cheaply. But it's a really good question, especially working in virtual reality because it's such a powerful medium. We work with multidisciplinary teams. We have psychologists that we speak to. We're very aware that the people that we're working with are journalists. PTSD is a real issue in the industry, and the worst thing is that we're definitely not trying to trigger people. So it's a fine line, and I think again with you guys bringing on board someone who'd been sexually abused and as an advisor on your project, I just think having people to talk to and making sure that you're speaking to experts and doing everything with a great amount of care is really important. I don't like these shoot 'em up games. I don't like these war games. I don't like war films. I'm not a big fan of war, if I'm honest. But I seem to not be able to escape it. But I take it really seriously as a creator, that do something that's ethical and sensitive because the subject matter is difficult.
Thank you.
Yes. Do we have a mic somewhere for? Thank you so much.
I just wanted to hear your views on. So we're giving a lot of examples here on more independent productions or maybe smaller productions that you do have a bit more creative freedom to push things. And